Born in Yemen under a devout religious family, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh and his early life was met with uncertainty. The young Yemeni took part in the 1994 Yemeni Civil War at the age of 22. He would only fight for a brief period before traveling to Munich, Germany, to obtain a visa to the United States. Exact details are unknown, but Bin al-Shibh is well known in Islamist militant circles in Bosnia at this time. The ex-wife of Reda Sayam will later recount traveling to Hamburg from Bosnia with Bin al-Shibh and Sayam in 1996. Sayam has never been convicted of any serious charge, but he is widely regarded by intelligence officials as one of al-Qaeda's most important operatives in Europe. Bin al-Shibh then applied for asylum inside Germany. From 1995 onward, while awaiting for the results of his asylum petition, he traveled to Bosnia in 1996. He then returned to Germany in 97, only to find out that his asylum was denied. Al-Shibh would then travel back to Yemen, his birthplace, where he would obtain a student visa at the German embassy in Sana'a. He then traveled back to Hamburg, Germany, only to become a recluse with poor social skills and had trouble in his grades at the University of Hamburg. Al-Shibh's inexperience at becoming socially inclusive was noticeable to anyone. It was around 1997 when he first met Mohammed Atta at al-Quds mosque in Hamburg, Germany. Atta found Al-Shibh to be mildly interesting, only due to the commonality of their shared theological position, which was Wahhabi Islam. Mohammed Atta, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh, and two of their associates, Mohammed Haydar Zamar and Mohammed Belfast, would find employment at a small Hamburg area computer company called Hay Computing Service. Atta and Belfast got their jobs through Agus Budiman, an Indonesian associate of theirs, who was already employed at the company. Zamar had begun grooming both Atta and al-Shibh to become more fervent in their Sunni Wahhabi beliefs by advocating violence to the disbelievers in the West, called kuffar. Zamar had long been under the monitoring of the German intelligence Bundesrat für Waffenforschung, or the BFB, who had begun tapping Zamar's phone for the past 12 months. Meanwhile, the CIA tried to court Zamar into an operative. Zamar had traveled back and forth from Germany to Afghanistan. They also had found out he was involved with the Chechen War as well as fighting alongside the Mujahideen in the Balkans. Zamar was a high-level al-Qaeda contact and had also been known to conduct in a myriad of criminal activities, which included gun running and being a financial courier for al-Qaeda. By December of 97 through November of 98, records would indicate that would-be hijacker Ramzi Bin al-Shibh would live at the same Hamburg, Germany address as a Moroccan named Mohammed Daki during this time. Daki will be arrested in April of 2003 and will admit to knowing Bin al-Shibh and some others in the Hamburg cell. In April of 1999, Daki will obtain a visa to travel to the United States, but it is not known if he goes there. It is generally assumed by the press that the Hamburg cell keep themselves separate from other al-Qaeda cells in Europe. However, Daki is an expert document forger and a member of al-Qaeda's Milan cell. There is considerable evidence that the Milan cell has foreknowledge of the 9/11 plot. The cell is under heavy surveillance by Italian intelligence before 9/11, but apparently the connection between Milan and Hamburg cells through Daki is not made. German authorities will later interview him after 9/11, and he will later admit to ties between al-Shibh and himself, but he would be let go and not investigated further and not put on any watch list. He will later come under investigation in Italy for recruiting fighters to combat the United States in Iraq. He will finally be arrested and charged for that, but not for his 9/11 connections. Mohammed Atta would leave Hamburg for some time in late 97 and early 98, and he may go to a military training camp in Afghanistan, possibly with hijacker associate Ramzi Bin al-Shibh. When Atta returns in the spring of 98, he tells his roommate that he had been on another pilgrimage to Mecca, although author Terry McDermott will later note in his book, Perfect Soldiers, quote, he had been on Hajj just 18 months earlier, and it would be unlikely for a student, even one so devout, to go twice so quickly or stay so long, end quote. This is Atta's longest absence since arriving in Hamburg, and there is no record of him spending any substantial portion of it at his home in Cairo, Egypt. According to McDermott, he leaves Hamburg as he usually did over the winter holiday. Atta and Bin al-Shibh would travel oftentimes together and disappear for months on end, telling relatives they were on Hajj. Their whereabouts would be unknown, but some speculate they would be meeting with al-Qaeda coordinator and fundraiser Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. It was during the summer of 1998 that the Hamburg cell would finally come to fruition under Atta and Ramzi's leadership. Here, they would meet future 9/11 hijackers Marwan al-Shehhi, Ziad Jarrah, and other al-Qaeda operatives such as Saeed Bahaji, Mohammed Haidar Zamar. Zamar was a longtime Syrian al-Qaeda operative involved with multiple nefarious criminal activities. It was under Zamar and another Syrian, German operative, Marwan Darkanzali, who had helped shape and coordinate the Hamburg cell in the mid-1990s. In December of 99, Bin al-Shibh, Mohammed Atta, Marwan al-Shehhi, and Ziad Jarrah would travel to Afghanistan to receive training at an al-Qaeda camp, where they would eventually meet with other top al-Qaeda echelon leaders such as Osama Bin Laden, Mohammed Atef, and Ayman al-Zawahiri. Bin Laden allegedly had asked al-Shibh his intentions. While al-Shibh said he wanted to fight in Chechnya and jihad, Bin Laden said if he wanted to work for him, and Bin al-Shibh agreed. Also at this time, German intelligence would have the Hamburg cell under constant surveillance, but produce very minimal results. The 9/11 Commission would later say that Mohammed al-Slahi was a part of a significant al-Qaeda operative, and it was even known to U.S. and German intelligence, although all charges against Slahi would later be dropped because there was no connection between Slahi or members of the Hamburg cell. 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed would later visit Hamburg at this time and meets with 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta and associate Ramzi Bin al-Shibh. Together, they make plans to carry out the 9/11 attacks in the United States. According to German investigators, by at least this time, the al-Qaeda Hamburg cell, including Atta, al-Shehhi, Ziad Jarrah, and Bin al-Shibh, had come up with the idea of attacking the United States using airplanes. This theory is based on witness statements and the discovery by the German police of a flight simulator file on a computer used by the Hamburg cell that was downloaded between January and October of 1999. In February of 2000, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh would travel to Karachi, Pakistan. There, he would meet with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, where he instructed both Atta and al-Shibh how to mix in with Western people, how to dress and behave like them in order not to stand out. Afterwards, Bin al-Shibh would try for a U.S. visa from the U.S. Embassy in Sana'a, Yemen. He was denied a passport, and then he traveled back to Frankfurt, Germany, even after applying for a pilot's training course throughout Germany and Yemen. During a trip to Afghanistan, he would meet with Bin Laden and Mohammed Atef again. This time, they relate to him the plans of 9/11 in which targets are selected. Bin Laden would also use al-Shib as a coordinator for the 9/11 hijackers and to relay messages from Afghanistan to the hijackers in Germany while inside the United States. 9/11 hijacker Marwan al-Shehhi takes a 3-day trip to Las Vegas and will later say he was followed on the trip. One of the hijackers' associates, al-Shib, would later say in a 2002 interview that al-Shehhi felt he was being followed on a flight from New York to California by security officers. Bin al-Shibh will also later say that fellow hijacker Ziad Jarrah felt he was also followed on a similar flight. 9/11 hijackers Marwan al-Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Midar also would be concerned about possibly being followed on a flight to the United States by security services. According to the 9/11 Commission, during their meeting in Spain, where they would discuss the looming attacks, 9/11 hijacker Mohammed Atta tells would-be hijacker Ramzi Bin al-Shibh that he considered targeting a nuclear facility in which he saw during familiarization flights near New York. This is presumably Indian Point, which is 30 miles north of New York City. American Airlines Flight 11, which Atta supposedly piloted on September 11, 2001, passes directly over Indian Point minutes before hitting the World Trade Center. However, the other pilots did not like the idea. They thought a nuclear target would be difficult because the airspace around it was restricted, making reconnaissance flights impossible and increasing the likelihood that any plane would be shot down before impact. Nor would a nuclear facility have any particularly symbolic value. In an interview with Al Jazeera journalist Yoshi Fruta in 2002, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh and Khalid Sheikh Mohammed would later claim that roughly around this day, he received a coded chat room message about the 9/11 plot from future hijacker Mohammed Atta in the United States. Fruta would later co-write a book, and in it, he will allege that Bin al-Shibh gave him a computer disk containing the exact message. The message, as translated by Fruta, reads, quote, "The first semester commences in 3 weeks. There are no changes. All is well. There are good signs and encouraging ideas. 2 high schools and 2 universities. Everything is going according to plan. The summer will surely be hot. I want to talk to you about some details. 19 certificates for private education and 4 exams. Regards to the professor. Goodbye," end quote. Fruta will claim that the message is in code and that Bin al-Shibh discussed with him what the real meaning was. In the book, Fruta says the real meaning is this, end quote. The 0 hour is going to be in 3 weeks' time. There are no changes. All is well. The brothers have been seeing encouraging visions and dreams. The Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and Capitol Hill. Everything is going according to plan. The summer will surely be hot. I want to talk to you about details. I will call you after we near the time, end quote. Bin al-Shibh also tells Fruta that the quote, "the summer will surely be hot," is a reference to the damage the attacks will cause. September 12, 2001, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh would travel to Pakistan and head over to Afghanistan. There he would meet with Egyptian al-Qaeda emir Ayman al-Zawahiri, Mohammed Atta, and Suleiman Abu Ghaith, and receive words of praise for the successful attacks in New York and Washington, D.C. Later, he would meet with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed in Yemen. There, both of them would give Al Jazeera reporter Yoshi Fruta a face-to-face meeting and interview about how the 9/11 attacks took hold. It was in this meeting with Fruta that they related the information about their participation and planning for the September 11th attacks. The idea coming straight from the Bajenka plot, a plot constructed by Mohammed and his nephew, 1993 World Trade Center bombing suspect Ramzi Youssef. Fruta had to leave the video he shot of the interview between al-Shibh and Mohammed so their faces can be blurred. But Fruta had kept audio of the interview. Some parts of the audio can be heard in Fruta's 2-part expose broadcast by Al Jazeera called Top Secret, September 11th. After the interview, both al-Shibh and Mohammed began their plans to hide out in safe houses in Pakistan for the time being. September 11, 2002, the CIA Special Activities Division, along with the Pakistan ISI, going off information from the U.S. Embassy in Islamabad, which was collected unexpectedly from the torture of al-Qaeda detainee Abu Zubaydah. However, this is questionable. The fact that the CIA had gotten this information that al-Shibh had been in Pakistan is not a revelation. It is also coming from the words of a man who had been brutally tortured and is suggesting this information was valid. The CIA is defending the methods of said torture. The actual information about al-Shibh's whereabouts had come from a U.S. satellite which picked up a phone call made by al-Shibh just 15 days prior to September 11, 2002. A call made by a NERA satellite phone which lasted just 5 minutes. The information gathered was then passed to the Pakistan ISI. Throughout the year, Pakistan militants had terrorized Karachi. One such area, Bajucha Parad, which was a suburb in Karachi, was under surveillance. It was during this raid that they learned of another residence where al-Qaeda militants would use as a conduit. The apartment was a 5-story residence in Karachi where new buildings were being constructed for Pakistan's middle-class residents. Acting on the information, both from Pakistan police and the ISI had begun to construct a surveillance on the tenement building. House 63C, 15th Commercial Street. Only 2 of the apartments were occupied. On the first floor, there was a family. On the 5th were the targets. The ISI set up surveillance. Azahar Hassan Nadim, Deputy Director and Inspector Central Police, had relayed the information to the CIA Special Activities Division, who had set a team there, but only to act as observers of the operation. Meanwhile, Pakistan ISI had begun a large-scale operation which saw 10 militants inside the house. Over 45 ISI agents had surrounded the perimeter and blocks were cordoned off. At approximately 7 a.m., September 11, 2002, 3 men exited the premises to visit a grocery store. They were apprehended without incident by the Pakistan authorities. However, as one of the militants were being led away, he had screamed over his shoulder toward the residents. The warning was noticed. Both the Pakistan police and ISI began to head towards the residents, but quickly were met with automatic gunfire. As the police tried to head up the stairs onto the 5th floor, grenades were thrown out of the window, killing 2 policemen as they tried to race out of the way. Over the course of the heavy gunfire, Pakistan ISI agents had managed to gain access to the roof, where they began to warn the militants inside about the lack of escape. During the near end of the siege, FBI agents had rushed to the scene. The police rushed inside the building and captured the remaining 7 terrorists. Captured and rushed to awaiting police cruisers among a throng of onlookers and residents shouting and yelling were 7 militants, an Egyptian, a Saudi, and 5 Yemenis. All were blindfolded and their wrists were tied by rags, not knowing that one of the people they had captured was one of the most wanted men in the world, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh. While at the station, they had learned about who they captured in the raid. The U.S. Embassy located in Islamabad had gotten the information that the Pakistan ISI had captured al-Shib. They ordered to release him to the CIA Special Activities Division, which followed up. Al-Shib was then transferred to a CIA black site in Morocco. According to the Senate Select Committee study on the CIA's detention and interrogation program, al-Shib had not any relevant information to give about any future operation from al-Qaeda. Thus, they tortured him further. Quote, CIA officers at Detention Site Blue therefore continued to use the CIA's enhanced interrogation techniques against Bin al-Shibh for approximately 3 additional weeks after this exchange, including sleep deprivation, nudity, dietary manipulation, facial holds, attention grasps, abdominal slaps, facial slaps, and walling. Bin al-Shibh did not provide the information sought on operatives inside the United States or large-scale attacks inside the United States, end quote. The CIA would provide 109 intelligence reports obtained from al-Shibh's interrogations during and after using SEER techniques. No information obtained by al-Shibh was not known to the public. Thus, the torture methods used on al-Shibh was useful according to the Senate's report, which elaborated further. Quote, much of Bin al-Shibh's statements on the September 11th attacks have been speculative, and many of the details could be found in media accounts of the attacks that appeared before he was detained. In the few instances where his reporting was unique and plausible, we cannot verify or refute the information. He has been sketchy on some aspects of the 9/11 plot, perhaps in order to downplay his role in the plot. His information on individuals is non-specific. He has given us nothing on the Saudi hijackers or others who played a role. The overall quality of his reporting has steadily declined since 2003, end quote. Ramzi Bin al-Shibh was reported to have been waterboarded over 81 times and transferred to numerous detention sites observed by the CIA's rendition program. He was transferred to numerous sites located in Poland, Afghanistan, Jordan, and finally was moved to Guantanamo Bay alongside Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, Ammar al-Baluchi, Mustafa al-Hasnawi, and Walid bin Attah, all who are being charged for their planning and participation in the September 11, 2001 attacks in New York and Washington. It would later become known that Aero Contractors, a North Carolina private charter plane operation, was known to employ renditions for the CIA. Human Rights Policy Lab at the UNC School of Law determined that it was through Aero Contractors who rendered al-Shibh to a CIA black site in Morocco. According to a detailed report by Human Rights Policy Lab, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh was subjected to extreme amounts of torture that had left him emotionally unstable. From page 76, quote, by early 2006, he had shuffled around the enhanced interrogation program for over 3 years, facing extreme isolation and having no contact with his family, who believed him to be dead. About a year before his final rendition to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, psychologists assessed that Ramzi Bin al-Shibh had recorded his severe psychological disturbances, all ramifications as a result of torture. He experienced visions, paranoia, insomnia, and attempts at self-harm. A psychologist on site wrote that Bin al-Shibh's case is important to keep in mind that he was previously a relatively high-functioning individual, making his deterioration over the past several months more alarming, end quote. Since his release from his initial Moroccan custody in 2002, Bin al-Shibh has provided the CIA with very little useful information, suggesting that the use of extreme extraordinary rendition practices and torture for 4 years of his life was of no benefit to assisting with the so-called significance to the war on terror. Rather than allow him a fair trial, the CIA subjected him to years of inhumane treatment in hopes of gaining al-Qaeda intelligence. On September 5th, 2006, Ramzi Bin al-Shibh was transferred into U.S. military custody at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, where he was placed on antipsychotic medications. He has since been charged with the conspiracy for the 9/11 attacks and is awaiting military trial. The Department of Defense has classified Ramzi Bin al-Shibh as an enemy combatant and shall be detained indefinitely, charged with participating and planning the September 11, 2001 attacks. Yet, the inhumane and unnecessary treatment of al-Shibh and others like Mohammed al-Shibh, Abu Zubaydah, by the CIA will most likely render him free of any charges or statements he had made to them under these conditions. The question we have to ask next, why did they torture him to such extremes, knowing that torture methods never work or produce any valuable information?
U.S. officials say Ramzi Bin al-Shibh knew some crucial operational details of the 9/11 plot. Now there's new information on tapes of his interrogation and new questions about how these might help or hurt the government's case against him. A knowledgeable U.S. source tells CNN the CIA found tapes of leading 9/11 suspect Ramzi Bin al-Shibh being interrogated. Believe it or not, the tapes were found under a desk at the agency. The source says the tapes don't show any so-called enhanced interrogation techniques like waterboarding. Those tapes were destroyed by the CIA. But these are believed to be the only tapes left showing what's known as a black site interrogation, the questioning of a terrorism suspect at a secret prison overseas. Our source says these tapes were recorded in Morocco. They were likely made several years ago after Bin al-Shibh's capture in Pakistan in September 2002. We spoke with Bin al-Shibh's attorney. He knew the CIA had found the tapes there 3 years ago, but didn't know they were of his client.
I was rather dumbfounded to think that we had litigated as long as we had in Guantanamo without knowing that there were tapes of Mr. Bin al-Shibh. When something like this occurs, you begin to question the transparency of the whole proceedings and what else is not being turned over, which is rather shocking. When you consider that we're dealing with a capital prosecution in what is supposed to be an American criminal court.
Ramzi Bin al-Shibh was, according to U.S. officials, a key operational commander in the 9/11 plot after he was unable to join the hijackers himself. CNN terrorism analyst Peter Bergen says it was Bin al-Shibh who connected the hijackers with Osama bin Laden, telling lead hijacker Mohammed Atta what targets bin Laden wanted to hit, then telling bin Laden that Atta had selected September 11th as the day of the attacks.
What might interrogators have been asking him on those tapes?
Well, the interrogators would have known that he gave a pretty substantial interview to Al Jazeera about his role in 9/11, but they want to get all that information again. They want to get into it in more detail. The structure of al-Qaeda, any other future plots against the United States.
Bin al-Shibh's lawyer won't comment on what effect these tapes will have on his case, which is now in limbo while the Obama administration decides where to try 9/11 suspects. But his client has been considered mentally unstable, and he hinted the tapes could be of use at competency hearings.
The fact that there would be tapes at that early a date would certainly give a baseline as to what his mental competency was at that point in time compared to what it might be at the time of the hearing. And that would be extremely relevant.
Contacted by CNN on the discovery of the tapes, a CIA spokesman issued us a statement saying, in part, the agency's past detention program has been subject to multiple reviews by multiple government organizations under 2 administrations. Some of those examinations continue to this day, a year and a half after the program itself went out of operation. The so-called black sites and enhanced interrogation methods, which were administered on the basis of guidance from the Justice Department, are a thing of the past. We have also contacted the Moroccan embassy regarding our reporting that these tapes were made at a site in Morocco. We've not heard back yet.